They never sensed me at first. Humans rarely do. Their minds cling to light, warmth, predictable things. I existed in the other spaces between their thoughts, in the soft folds of the dark where their eyes refused to look. The new tenant in the house beside mine arrived at dusk, dragging a suitcase and fatigue behind him. I watched through the slits in the walls, through gaps they never notice. The air trembled faintly around him, a sign he was not like the others. He felt something, a brush of my presence, the whisper of a shape where none should be. I curled deeper into the shadowed corner, waiting. The hunt must begin. The house they gave him was old, older than any human memory. Its beams groaned with the weight of decades and of me. I seeped through the wood like cold breath, tasting his scent as he unpacked. He moved cautiously, pausing too often, listening to sounds he couldn't place. I smiled, though humans would never recognize the expression. He was aware enough to fear. A rare gift. When he turned off the lights and settled into his room, I slid under the floorboards, spreading like spilled ink. The night thickened. It was time to reach closer. He dreamed of me the first night. Humans often do, though they forget upon waking. But he woke trembling, breath sharp, pupils wide. Good. I let my shape brush the corner of his vision as he lit his bedside lamp. A long limb, a shifting outline, something almost familiar but horribly wrong. He froze, unable to determine whether he saw movement or memory. I thrive in those cracks of uncertainty. When he finally whispered, "Is someone there?" the darkness around him deepened with amusement. I was everywhere, and nowhere he could reach. He began keeping lights on. A foolish attempt. Light cannot save them from what walks between atoms. Still, I observed. He spoke to neighbors, curious, fearful ones in the next house. They warned him of noises, of strange shapes in the garden at night. How amusing. They spoke of me without knowing. I drifted along the ceiling while he swallowed their stories with unease. His awareness grew. Awareness is a doorway. Once opened, it stays open. And I entered freely. The first time I touched him physically, he didn't know. My fingers, thin as strands of smoke, brushed his back as he leaned over the sink. He shuddered, thinking it only the cold draft. I coiled around him, studying the pulse in his neck, the fragile structure of bone beneath skin. Humans are soft, so easily broken. But I do not destroy without purpose. I waited for nightfall. The moment he closed his eyes again, I would unravel the fear inside him thread by trembling thread. He started avoiding mirrors. Wise. They show more than humans wish. I often appeared behind him, just a blur, a wrong angle, a shape without face. His heartbeat changed each time. Quick, jagged, delicious. The darker the fear, the stronger I became. His house groaned beneath my growing weight. At night, I roamed openly, dragging my form through hallways like liquid shadow. He heard me now. And yet he stayed. Curiosity is the last step before doom. On the seventh night, he finally spoke to me. Not aloud. Humans rarely dare. But in a trembling thought as he pressed his back to the wall. "If something is here, please don't hurt me." I tilted my head, amused. Hurt him? No. Pain is simple. Fear is art. Instead, I pressed closer, letting my weight bow the old wooden boards. He whimpered. The sound vibrated through me like music. I whispered into his skull, "Not yet." He began researching. Books, articles, old town rumors. I watched from behind his chair as he pieced together fragments of the truth. The creature in the woods. The whispers under the floor. The neighbor sightings. Me. His fear sharpened, no longer a blur but a clean blade. Good. Precision makes it stronger. Outside, winter thickened. Snow sealed the houses like coffins. No one would hear him if he screamed. The neighbors noticed him changing. They spoke in hushed tones, avoided his eyes, locked their doors earlier. They sensed me too, though they pretended otherwise. Some humans are born with thin walls around their minds. I seep through easily. One neighbor, a woman, looked directly at me once. Her pupils shrank in pure instinctual terror. She never left her house again. I wondered how long until he reached that point. Tonight, he tried to leave. Suitcase packed, hands shaking. I watched him step toward the front door, breath fast, heartbeat frantic. He touched the doorknob, and I wrapped myself around the entire house. The walls bowed inward with a wooden groan. The lights flickered violently. He froze. I whispered, "You cannot leave." "Not yet." He fell to his knees. The scent of his terror was intoxicating. I had him now. Fully. He didn't try to flee again that night. Instead, he crawled backward from the door, dragging the suitcase like a wounded animal. I followed him from the ceiling, my limbs stretched thin across the beams. He whispered nonsense, broken prayers, half-remembered words. Humans believe their language protects them. It does not. When he reached the bedroom doorway, I let one of my limbs lower, brushing the air above his hair. He sensed it instantly. A small gasp escaped him, raw, strangled. I could almost taste the panic trembling in his lungs. Outside, the wind howled, but it carried my voice as well. "You stay. You watch. You understand." He didn't answer, but his eyes told me he finally knew. There was no escaping a creature that lived inside the walls. He stopped sleeping. For humans, this is the beginning of unraveling. Their minds soften, boundaries blur. I visited him more boldly now, shapes flickering behind doors, slow dragging sounds beneath the floor, a whisper that always came from the wrong direction. Each time, he trembled harder. One morning, he sat at the table without moving for an hour, staring at the wall. I pressed myself against the other side of that wall, mere centimeters from his skull. The pulse in him beat unevenly, fast, slow. He whispered, "What do you want?" The question pleased me. To be seen, I breathed into him, soft as frost. He understood too well. His eyes filled with dread, not of pain, but of truth. He searched the attic next. Humans cling to the illusion that monsters hide above them. But I never hid there. Still, I followed his ascent, twisting myself through the narrow spaces between boards. Dust rose as he stepped, coughing, flashlight trembling in his hand. When he reached the center of the attic, I let the rafters creak, slow, deliberate, like something shifting its weight. He turned in a panic, the flashlight beam jumping wildly. Then, for the first time, he caught a clear glimpse of me. A silhouette tall enough to brush the roof, limbs bending at unnatural angles. He screamed. I didn't move. Let him see. Let him break. After the attic, he shut himself in the bedroom for an entire day, curtains drawn, lights on. As if light could block me out. I seeped through anyway. Under the door, behind the dresser, through the gaps in the window frame. He sat on the bed gripping a pillow like a shield. His breath came in ragged bursts. I reached through the wall and tapped the headboard once. He flinched violently. I tapped again. His voice cracked. "Please, go away." But why would I? He had become fascinating. Humans reveal their truest selves only at the edge of terror. And he was nearing that edge at last. The neighbors spoke less now. Their fear ripened too. They felt the house changing, felt me stretching inside it. Some nights they heard him scream, though he tried to muffle the sound. No one helped. No one dared. The woman who once saw me drew her curtains permanently. I passed by her window last night. She sat motionless in a chair, staring at nothing. Humans break in such delicate ways. He was breaking too, but slower, resisting, clinging to sanity by bloodied fingertips. That struggle made him delicious. Tonight he tried something new. He spoke to me as though I were a human intruder. His voice shook, but he forced each word. I know you're there. I know you can hear me. What are you? I leaned over him from the ceiling, though he couldn't see me through the dark. I am what fills the spaces you ignore, I whispered. He covered his ears. I am what grows where light cannot reach. He curled into himself. I am older than your language, older than your fear, older than your kind. By then he was sobbing. Good. Let him understand the scale of his insignificance. Sleep finally claimed him after days of exhaustion. His body collapsed under its own weight, trembling as it surrendered. I slithered into his dreams easily. Humans dream with unlocked doors. Inside his mind, the house stretched endlessly, hallways looping, stairs twisting, rooms blinking in and out of existence. He wandered barefoot, calling for help that never came. I followed without touching the floor. When he turned and saw me fully in the dreamscape, he didn't scream. He simply fell to his knees and whispered, "Why me?" "Because you saw me first," I answered. Even though he hadn't realized it then. He woke screaming. Sweat soaked the sheets, his pulse thundered. I perched on the wardrobe, limbs dangling like roots. He sensed me there, though he couldn't see. Humans feel truth in their bones long before their minds accept it. I can't take this, he muttered, shaking. Please, someone? There was no one. Winter swallowed the town whole, roads blocked, phones dead. Isolation wrapped him tighter than I ever could. When he fainted from panic, I climbed down silently and sat beside his unconscious body. His fear had matured beautifully. Soon, he would be ready. He tried to destroy the house next. Tools, frantic movements, desperate breath. He hammered at the walls, screaming wild, broken words. But every blow only echoed through me. This place was part of my body now, and his violence felt like a massage, pointless, almost pleasant. He swung harder. The hammer snapped. He dropped to the floor, sobbing, forehead pressed to the cold wood. I descended behind him, slow enough for the air to change temperature. You cannot destroy what shelters you, I whispered. He didn't look up. He knew it was true. He is quiet tonight, too quiet. Silence in humans is never peace, it is surrender. He sits in the living room wrapped in a blanket, staring at the doorway as if expecting me to enter like a guest. I indulge him. I let my shape glide forward, visible enough to be undeniable. Tall spine, branching limbs, featureless face. He doesn't scream this time. Instead, he whispers, "If you're going to kill me, do it." I tilt my head. Kill you? I kneel beside him, letting the floor bend under my weight. No. I am teaching you what lives beside you. His breath stops. And what you will soon become. He did not sleep beside me on the floor. He merely existed there, suspended between terror and numbness. Humans call this shock. I call it ripening. I settled into the walls for a while, letting the house breathe around him. The wood pulsed softly, my pulse, and he listened as though hearing the heartbeat of something ancient. Hours passed. He didn't move. When the sun rose, pale and useless behind the snowstorm, he finally spoke. "If you're not here to kill me, what do you want me to do?" "Ah, at last. Witness," I told him. "Become what your eyes were not meant to forget." He shivered violently, yet nodded. The transformation always begins with surrender. I guided him to the hallway, the long, narrow throat of the house. He hesitated at every step, using the wall for balance, as if gravity had turned hostile. I made sure he heard the neighbors. Their muffled voices trembled behind their doors. They felt the shift, the awakening. One of them whispered a prayer. Another sobbed softly. He looked back at me, though I stood behind him like a tall shadow stretching across the boards. "What happens to them?" he asked. "Nothing," I said. "Humans always misunderstand. You are the one who called me, not them." He paled. He did not remember calling. But he did. I showed him the first truth, the seams of the world. In the kitchen, beneath the tiles, the border between his realm and mine had thinned enough to shimmer. A soft ripple of darkness moved under the floor like ink beneath ice. He knelt, terrified yet drawn to it. It wasn't like this before. No, it had always been. Humans simply refused to see beyond the surface. The ripple expanded when he touched the tile. A faint voice, mine, but older, echoed through the floorboards. He yanked his hand back. I laughed, not to mock him, but because he had heard my true tongue at last. The neighbors finally cracked. Late in the night, I heard them dragging furniture, piling chairs and tables against their doors. A futile barricade. Their fear flavored the air, sweet and metallic. He listened to them with hollow eyes. "You're scaring them?" "No," I corrected. "They scare themselves. I merely reveal what already stirs inside them." The woman downstairs began sobbing uncontrollably. Another neighbor muttered that the house was cursed. He looked at me with sudden clarity. "This is because of me." Yes. Now he understood the weight of awakening something ancient. The house groaned tonight. A long, deep resonance like the shifting of a massive creature in its sleep. He clutched the stair railing as the boards vibrated beneath his feet. "What's happening?" "It grows," I answered. "As you do." The staircase elongated subtly, steps stretching like softened wax. He blinked, unable to tell if the distortion was real or his unraveling mind. I brushed the back of his neck with the faintest touch. He nearly collapsed. Humans are not built to perceive living architecture. Their minds rebel, twist, fracture. He was holding on, but just barely. Tonight I led him to the basement, the womb of the house. The air was thick and warm, pulsing faintly, as though the walls inhaled and exhaled. He hesitated at the top of the stairs. "I don't want to go down there." "You must." He descended slowly, each step echoing like a heartbeat. At the bottom lay the oldest part of my presence. Blackened roots spreading across the concrete, as thin as veins and as deep as hunger. He froze. "What is that?" "Me," I said simply. "Before shape. Before thought." He backed away, trembling violently. Good. He should know my origins. When he fled the basement, he didn't run upstairs, he ran outside. Into the blizzard. I let him. Humans always believe the cold darkness outside is safer than the darkness they know. He stumbled through deep snow, sobbing, calling for help no one could hear. The storm swallowed his voice instantly. I glided behind him, my shape long and thin, barely visible through the white veil. He collapsed near the road, coughing violently. "Please, someone, help me." "I am someone," I whispered. He didn't look up. He finally understood there was no world left untouched by me. He survived only because I wished it. I wrapped myself around him, warming his body with borrowed heat as he drifted in and out of consciousness. When he awoke back inside the house, he whispered, "Why didn't you let me die?" "Death is small," I told him. "You are meant for more." His breath rattled in his chest. I let my face, or what passes for my face, come close to his. Close enough that he could see the shifting, liquid darkness beneath my surface. He did not scream. He only whispered, "Are you making me like you?" Finally, the right question. The answer revealed itself when he stood and the house shifted around him. The walls leaned subtly, bowing toward him. The floorboards pulsed beneath his feet. He gasped, "It's reacting to me." As it should. I circled him slowly, limbs brushing his shoulders like cold branches. "You opened the seam. You fed the pulse. You invited me in before you ever knew my name." I didn't. Humans call without speaking. Loneliness is a summons. Fear is a doorway. You were wide open long before I arrived. He staggered. He remembered. And that memory hurt more than anything I had done. That night, I led him to the living room and told him to sit. He obeyed without hesitation. Another sign the change was blooming inside him. The house became silent, utterly still. Even the storm outside paused its breath. Then the floor beneath him opened, not physically, but perceptually. A widening darkness, like an expanding pupil, swallowed his reflection. He trembled violently. "Do not fear," I told him. "This is the sight you were meant to have." And he saw. He saw the layers beneath the world, the structures that support existence like ribs of a colossal beast. He screamed, not in terror but in recognition. He did not recover from the vision quickly. His mind drifted in and out, pulled between the familiar and the forbidden. I watched him sit on the floor, hands trembling, pupils dilated as if he still saw the layers beneath reality. "Is this permanent?" he whispered. "Nothing is permanent," I said. "But truths do not disappear once revealed." He closed his eyes, fighting the urge to look again. Humans cling to sanity only because they believe it is all they have left. But he had more now. He had me. And the house accepted him, its pulse aligning slowly with his own. Awakening rarely happened this quickly, but he was special. He had been broken long before I arrived. The next night, the neighbors' fear became unbearable, even for them. The woman downstairs screamed for hours, insisting that something walked outside her window. Another neighbor tried to flee the building, but the front door had grown sealed shut by my roots. He heard them crying. He pressed his palms to his ears. "Stop, please. You feel their fear now," I told him. "Just as they feel yours. Fear is contagious. It spreads faster than contagion, faster than flame." And he was radiating it without speaking, a beacon drawing them toward panic. He finally understood. He was becoming a part of the house's hunger. When he finally slept, he dreamed of me. That was expected. But he also dreamed of himself, distorted, multiplied, reflected in angles that did not exist in his world. He woke with a gasp, drenched in cold sweat. I saw myself wrong. "No," I said. "You saw yourself correctly for the first time." He clutched his chest, as though fearing something inside him might split open. The transformation was slow, but it had begun. And dreams were the first sign. Humans think nightmares come from fear. But nightmares are doorways, and he was already opening them. He began hearing things even when I was silent. Whispers crawling along the walls. Footsteps in rooms where no humans lived. Soft tapping on windows from the inside. He pressed his back to the wall, eyes darting wildly. "Is that you?" "No." He stared at me in growing terror. Then, "Who?" "The house," I explained. "It speaks now because you can finally hear it." This broke him more than any vision I had shown. Not because the house was alive, but because it had always been alive, and he had simply been deaf to its voice. The neighbors finally attempted revolt. They gathered in the stairwell, clutching flashlights and kitchen knives, trying to appear brave. He listened from behind his door, shaking. "They're coming for me, aren't they?" "Yes. Humans destroy what they fear. But they had no idea whom they were planning to confront. Slowly, the house dimmed its lights, starving their flashlights, draining their courage. One neighbor screamed, insisting the shadows were moving. Another dropped his knife and fled back upstairs. The revolt was over before it began. They were prey pretending to be hunters. He no longer avoided mirrors. He sought them. Every reflective surface in the house offered him glimpses of something beneath his skin. A dark shimmer, a pulse, a shadow not matching his movements. He touched the mirror. His reflection blinked a moment late. He recoiled violently. "Make it stop. You asked for truth," I reminded him. "And truth is never kind." He smashed the mirror in desperation. The shards on the floor continued reflecting his face, but not the one he wore. The one he was becoming. The house decided to help him. It began reshaping itself subtly to match his new perception. Doorways stretched taller. Corners sharpened into impossible angles. The ceiling pulsed like a living membrane. He crawled into a corner, clutching his head. "I'm losing myself." "No," I corrected gently. "You are finding the version of you buried beneath years of pretending." He wept, not from fear, but from realization. The man he once was had been weak, small, trembling in shadows. The being he was becoming was made of shadow. The storm outside finally calmed. But inside, the storm only grew. He walked the hallway slowly, touching the walls, feeling them pulse beneath his fingertips. "They know me now," he whispered. "They always did." The house recognized him, not as an intruder, not as prey, but as something familiar. The neighbors sensed the shift and remained hidden, too terrified to breathe loudly. He stood before their doors, listening. "You said I called you, but why?" "Because you were made for this." He did not argue. He understood. The storm outside finally calmed. But inside, the storm only grew. He walked the hallway slowly, touching the walls, feeling them pulse beneath his fingertips. "They know me now," he whispered. "They always did." The house recognized him, not as an intruder, not as prey, but as something familiar. The neighbors sensed the shift and remained hidden, too terrified to breathe loudly. He stood before their doors, listening. "You said I called you, but why?" "Because you were made for this." He did not argue. He understood. He approached me willingly for the first time. There was no fear in his eyes now, only hunger for understanding. "What happens next?" "You merge with the place that called you," I answered. He looked around the living room, at the breathing walls, the shifting shadows, the trembling windows. "This house?" "Yes. And more." He took a step closer. The air warped gently around him. The house sighed, a long, low exhale of acceptance. He was no longer a victim. No longer prey. He was becoming its heart. I felt it again tonight. A warmth pulsing from the human's house, like a heartbeat muffled under heavy snow. It always begins after midnight, when they think the world is asleep. They whisper louder, fear leaking from them like steam. I feed on that fear. It is sweeter in winter, richer, almost tangible. The man with trembling hands now keeps a knife under his pillow. I watch him through the thin veil between our walls. He senses me closest when he closes his eyes. He thinks the knife will protect him, but metal means nothing to me. Tonight they argued. Their voices quivered, not from anger but from terror. They feel me entering deeper, brushing their dreams. I tightened my presence, pressing against their fragile minds. Soon the warmth will grow into panic. Soon the pulse will break. They finally heard it. The sound I make when I move through the old beams beneath their floor. A soft dragging, a slow crawling, my limbs folding and unfolding like wet branches. They froze instantly. even their breathing locked in place. Humans are so beautifully predictable. The woman covered her ears, but the noise was inside her skull, vibrating like a dying bell. She looked at the ceiling as if something might fall from above, unaware that I was below, inches from her bare feet. I let my fingers slide along the wood, slow enough for them to feel each second stretch. Their fear thickened the air until it tasted metallic. I will carve this sound into their memory. Soon, even silence will terrify them. They tried to name me. Humans believe that giving fear a word makes it smaller. How wrong they are. When the trembling woman whispered, "The Watcher," my form thickened, sharpened, became more real in their minds, and therefore more powerful. Names bind. Names feed. Their attempts to label me only anchor me deeper into their home. I leaned close to the wall, letting my shadow seep through the cracks. The man gasped and stepped back as if struck. He felt me, finally. They think they invented the name. But the truth is simpler. I placed that word into their dreams days ago. They only repeated what I whispered first. Tonight I split myself into 3 forms, thin, drifting silhouettes that moved along their hallway. Humans see me only when exhaustion pulls their minds apart. They woke simultaneously, sensing multiple presences. Panic blossomed instantly. The woman clutched her blanket, believing it offered protection. The man reached for the knife but dropped it. His hands shook too violently. My 3 shadows slid across the walls, merging, parting, circling them like slow predators. When they screamed, it wasn't out of pain, not yet, but out of understanding. They finally realized I was not one thing. I was many. And I was hungry. Snow hammered the glass all night, but they still opened the window at dawn, desperate for fresh air. Instead, they breathed me. My presence poured in with the cold like black fog. Their lungs seized. Their eyes widened. I slid onto the sill, no longer hiding my shape. A twisted outline, tall and bending in impossible angles. The woman fainted. The man tried to close the window, but the frame froze the instant my fingers touched it. He realized too late that I was already inside, not through the window, but through every thought they left unguarded. They packed their bags in silence. No arguing now, no trembling whispers, only raw desperation. They thought leaving the house would save them. Humans always believe distance breaks the bond. They never learn. When they stepped outside, the snow around their boots shifted toward them like something alive. They didn't notice at first. They walked faster, clutching each other. I followed beneath the surface, my form flowing through the frozen soil. They reached the road. They looked back at the house. And then they realized. Their shadows weren't following them. Their shadows were walking toward the house instead. The house has always been more than wood and stone. It breathes. It listens. Tonight it chose who would stay. Their shadows slipped through the doorway first, vanishing like smoke. The humans hesitated at the threshold, torn between terror and the faint hope of survival. The house creaked, not from wind, but from hunger. I stood behind them, towering, ensuring there was no escape. They finally understood. The house was never cursed. It was alive. And it wanted company. The door closed behind them on its own. The sound was final, like a coffin sealing shut. They discovered the room too late, the one I had shown only in their nightmares. Wooden walls pulsed like veins. Floorboards rose and fell with slow breaths. They clung to each other, shaking violently. I stepped inside, and the room responded. The lights dimmed, shadows thickened, the house exhaled with anticipation. They asked me what I wanted. Humans always ask, as if the answer will matter. What I want is simple. To fill the silence of winter with voices that will never escape these walls. Their minds broke first. The man tried to scream, but the room swallowed the sound. The woman tried to run, but the doorway stretched into endless darkness. They were no longer resisting, only dissolving. When I placed my hand on their shoulders, they collapsed like wet paper. Their shadows wrapped around them, binding them gently, lovingly. I felt their final fears flicker and fade. They did not die. They changed. And now they are part of the house, part of me. The house is quiet now. Perfectly still. But silence in winter is never empty. It vibrates with new voices, soft and obedient. The humans rest deep within the walls, dreaming the dreams I give them. I return to my place between the beams, waiting. Watching. There will be new footsteps in the snow soon. Travelers, wanderers, lost souls searching for warmth. And the house hungers again. And I will welcome them.